Hey everyone, welcome to the Audi Q7, actually the 2020 Audi Q7, which has been refreshed. And you join me out here in Palm Springs, California on a little bit of a dirt road. And I'm on a dirt road because this new Q7 actually has an off-road mode. And if you get the Prestige package, you have air suspension, which lifts this car up just to help you out on some of that rougher terrain. Now, of course, this is not much of an off-road course. This is just a little bit of a dirt road. But even still, this car has standard quattro all-wheel drive with a center differential lock according to Audi, and it even has hill descent control, which turns on when you go slowly down hills. Now the Q7 is bigger than an X5 but smaller than the X7, but what you need to know is it's actually the exact same size as the Lincoln Aviator, which is great for large families. It seats 7, but as we'll find out, the third row really isn't all that comfortable. All right guys, check it out. Here is the exterior of the refreshed Audi Q7. And this is actually the second generation Q7. And for 2020, it has a new face, a new side, and a new rear end. And we're gonna go over all the differences. Now, if you recall, the old one was a lot more horizontal in the front end. This new one is a lot more vertical. You've got vertical blades here on the side, vertical blades down the grille. And the headlights now are much more angular. The old ones were just kind of these rectangles. The new ones actually have some shape to them, and this really cool new LED lighting signature. Coming along the side here, you'll notice a new set of wheels. Now there are several different wheels available for the 2020 Audi Q7. This one you see here has the 20-inch wheels, but you can actually spec all the way up through 22-inch wheels if you so desire. Along the side, new silver accenting, quattro there on the back, and the rear is really where much of the improvements come. Once again, the old one had just a kind of a blobby rear taillight. This new one has this cool silver strip that extends all the way through the center here with a much more dynamic light design with actually a sequential LED that runs the length of the taillight, quattro badging. But one thing that I think is a vast change over the old one is the tailpipes. The new one now has tailpipe trim, but the actual tailpipes live well underneath the fascia. I loved how the old ones had real tailpipes that would just simply stick out the rear end. This new one has gotten to that trend of faking people out, but this one of course has the tow hitch, and Audi says that the new Q7 is rated to tow 7,700 pounds, and there is your 7-pin connector. So you're ready to go. All right, now for the interior of the new Q7. So first thing you notice is the doors. This one is the Prestige model, which is the top spec model, and it's got my favorite all-time feature on luxury vehicles. Soft closed doors, I love that. But stepping inside, you'll notice a bunch of changes over the old ones. So first of all, we've got this nice brown leather interior, and the biggest change has got to be the overall dash profile, which is now completely new. So the old one had that little screen that folded up from the dash. This new one now has this completely smooth and modern design. I really like the way it all comes to life when you push the start button. Take a look. And there you can see all the controls just rise into life. So you'll also notice here we've got a digital dash, and I can configure it using these buttons here in the steering wheel. So I can do a full Google Map view there of the navigation. Of course, I can see my telephone and the music and all the stats around the car. And then here in the center, you not only have one screen that controls your infotainment, your music, your Apple CarPlay, but also controls more navigation. So you can really know exactly where you're going based on this Google Maps view. Audi was the first to incorporate this, and it looks absolutely brilliant even here in 2020. Now the other cool thing is they've gone to a digital display here for your temperature controls and your seat heating and your massaging if it came equipped. So what they've done now is a little haptic display here. When I mean haptic, it not only clicks, but there's a little hammer behind the display that hits the hammer when you touch something. So it's really kind of a visceral experience. It allows you to be able to control the temperature without taking your eyes off the road. So you have a number of different drive modes here in the Audi, and you change them by pushing these buttons, ranging from off-road to all-road to comfort, auto, dynamic. And because we have the top dog Prestige, you'll notice right there our suspension setting, and the suspension actually changes depending on what mode you're in. So for example, in off-road here, you can see we're raising up to 4 out of 5 clicks, but then if I go down into, for example, dynamic, the whole vehicle will lower for a more sporty driving experience. Here's your drive selector, so you pull back for drive, push forward for reverse, neutral, and then park is a button. There's your parking brake. And here is your safety equipment, so you can
really configure driver assistance to exactly how you'd expect it to work. Now the overall interior quality feels just as you'd expect. Everything is nice and tight. All the materials feel really crisp. I really think it's an improvement over the old one. On the left here, you've got your automatic headlights, seat controls, locks, and then 4 automatic power windows with your child cutouts. Overall, the design is perhaps a little bit minimalist. Some people out there like a little bit more design, but I think it's great. And with the full panoramic sunroof, it even feels quite airy in here.
Now the Q7 starts at just under $55,000, but this prestige model you see here comes in at just over $74,000. On the road, it drives pretty well. It's not as sporty as an X5 or an X7. It's a little bit less sporty even than the Mercedes GLE, but it is well made, it is very comfortable, and it simply floats along with this air suspension. And out here on these dirt roads, with these somewhat mind-bogglingly large cliffs on either side, we're able to maintain confidence because the full-time all-wheel drive makes sure that we stay planted and stay on track.
All right, let's talk engines here in the new Audi Q7. Now there are really 2 engines that most people will buy. The base engine is a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder, but this engine right here is a 3-liter turbocharged V6. And here's where things get a little bit interesting, because the pre-facelift model actually had a supercharged 3-liter V6, but they've gone to turbocharging in this new model, as they have done pretty much across the board in new Audis. Now this engine develops 335 horsepower, which is just a little bit more than the outgoing model, but over 40 pound-feet of torque more than the supercharged unit. That means that this car should accelerate quicker to 60. Audi says under 6 seconds, but fuel economy, funny enough, has gotten substantially worse. On the highway, this car is rated at 21 mpg. The old one was actually rated at 25. That's a big drop in highway rating, and even the mixed rating, city and highway, has gone down a couple. So it's worth noting that while it may be more powerful, perhaps a little quicker, it really hasn't gotten any more efficient. All right, let's check out the back seat here in the new Q7. So first of all, one thing Sophion, who's behind the camera, and I notice is the back door really doesn't open all that much, which is kind of surprising. But the back seat itself is actually pretty good, at least the second row. So I've got a tremendous amount of legroom, even with this panoramic sunroof. I've got a lot of headroom, and then this one even has controls in the rear for your temperature and heat of your seats. That is all good stuff. Now the part you're probably wondering about is the third row, because the Q7 comes standard with a third row of seats. Now it's not quite as simple as some of the German competition to get into the third row. It's actually a 2-step procedure. There we go. All right, wish me luck. So getting into the third row is actually pretty good. But first and foremost, it's quite narrow back here. And let me see if I can even, oh yes, this is not brilliant so far. It's kind of a penalty box, if I'm being honest. It's just not very good. Sophion, can you scoot the seat up, or I'm really gonna have a bad time right here. So that the seats luckily fold forward, but as you can see, I'm about 6'1". I am totally out of headroom. I don't have a lot of hip room here. I have no knee room. My knees are in my face. This really is not a very usable third row, especially for adults on a regular basis. Whoa. No.
Now when you get it on the pavement, the new Q7 is very comfortable. And I mean very comfortable regardless of the mode. So dynamic, comfort, auto, it's all pretty much the same. It doesn't really ever firm up that much, which means that on some of these twisty roads, it's never really gonna be all that fun to drive. But the good news of that is when you drive this, like 95% of people drive it, which is every day and on the highway and in school zones, it's great. It soaks up the bumps, it's very, very quiet, and it just kind of floats along. I mean, it's a car not tuned for the Nürburgring, it's a car tuned for your everyday life, and that's exactly what I'd like to see in these 3-row crossovers. There is a surprising amount of lag when you really put your foot into it, even with this 3-liter turbo, but once it spools up, it does move along with a decent amount of confidence. Of course, you have paddle shifters and sport modes for the transmission as well, which do help a little bit, but it's never gonna be the S model. Now Audi did tell us the other day that there's an SQ7 coming with a big old turbocharged V8. That's going to be the one to get if you're looking to drive quickly and really hustle around the canyons. But for everyday use, for highway commutes, I'd say that this Q7 is absolutely adequate. It does the job just fine, and it's got a lot of cool safety tech that you come to expect in modern luxury SUVs. And one of the coolest things it does now is it actually has a feature where in over 10,200 cities across the US, it's linked with the traffic lights, which means it knows how long a light's going to stay green, how long it stays red, and it will even suggest speeds along your route, say 33 miles an hour, which it knows will be the best way to hit the most possible green lights. That's a lot of cool tech in a car, especially if you're used to kind of stop and go crummy traffic situations.
Let's take a quick peek at the trunk space, which is surprisingly cavernous in this new Q7. Now we've got all of our video gear back here all piled in, and even with the third row up, we're able to make it fit. But to put the third row down, you actually have to use these little switches. And it's a push and hold, and eventually they'll fold down. Plus, as you can see there with that seat, the second row folds completely. Now, one cool feature here on the Q7 is I can actually use the air suspension, push this button, and lower the rear end for a little bit of extra ease in loading cargo. So the rear capacity is quite impressive, better than I think the BMW X5.
Well, there you guys have it, the first look at the brand new Audi Q7. Now stay tuned for when we get this car out to Colorado, because we're really going to put this thing through its paces, hook up a brake controller, and see what it'll tow up the Icon with nearly 8,000 pounds behind it. That's going to be really interesting. Thanks for watching. Head over to tflcar.com for the latest and greatest in new car reviews.